like, bro, yeah, she got a kid. Look at his back. Oh my god. Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome back to another reaction. See if you're reacting to BritMonkey. Stop being a climate change doomer. Yes. I wonder what exactly he's talking about here. I don't know. He may be talking about like climate change isn't necessarily
like pessimistic.
Yeah, people who see climate change as like the end all. Like it's like we're not necessarily paying attention to it. We haven't taken the necessary steps to try to negate it. Well, I think most governments in the world have already taken the step to try to reduce their carbon footprint. Because I think anyone with a brain will probably want to try to deter their own destruction.
Yeah.
So you see a lot of countries, especially in Europe, already take the steps to try to like switch to like nuclear power or hydropower and stuff like that. Well, yeah, we're gonna see what this guy has to say. If you're enjoying the reaction, hit that like button, subscribe, and share button. Really appreciate our support. We're gonna hop right into this video.
When it comes to climate change, my generation are a bunch of miserable, pessimistic, depressing, gloomy, bleak, disheartening doomers. And I get why they feel that way. We're constantly bombarded with the news about how we have only so many years to solve the problem, and every year is the hottest on record, and politicians won't listen, and corporations are still polluting, yada yada yada. Can we just reset the doom button here? I'm not going to tell you that climate change isn't real, or in a couple of decades it won't be absolutely terrible, because it is. And it will be, but the outlook and the human resolve to do something about it is not as bad as it looks. Remember when you were a kid and you read about the hole in the ozone layer and how it was causing Antarctica to melt faster and we were all gonna die for using hairspray? Well, guess what? We fixed that. Every country got around the negotiating table and we all agreed to stop using the gases that caused the hole in the ozone layer. But you never heard about that, did you? Because good news doesn't generate headlines like bad news does.
No,
here's some more good climate news that you might have missed. In the USA alone, of the 530 coal power plants that existed in 2005, only 191 of them are left. More US electricity is now powered by renewables instead of coal, and the gap is only getting wider each year. When it comes to a growing energy demand, the new installations are overwhelmingly clean energy, and less than 1% are oil or coal plants. Los Angeles is well known for its awful air pollution, but even during the forest fire season, LA air is nowhere near as bad as it was on a daily basis in the 1980s. In 2005, the EU adopted a continent-wide cap-and-trade system, which made companies pay for a license to pollute. 15 years later, emissions are down 21%, 6 years ahead of schedule. In one of the most stunning decarbonisation efforts in human history, France went from generating half of their energy from fossil fuels in 1978 to 10% and falling just 10 years later through a rapid rollout of nuclear and hydro power. In 2012, Great Britain generated more than 50% of its energy with coal, but less than 10 years later, and now we barely even switched the coal plants online. 97% of Scotland's power comes from renewables. This is up from less than 30% 12 years ago in 2009. We've been rapidly transitioning off fossil fuels for a while, and we're only getting faster. In 2020 alone, the world invested $500 billion in total towards the transition from fossil fuels. And over the past 5 years, we've spent over $2.5 trillion. That means we're spending more on fixing climate change than the entire world spends on the space industry. The European Union topped the list with $166 billion of investment, followed by China at $135 billion, and the USA in third at $85 billion. And that was with a climate change denying lunatic in charge. This new guy is taking it even more seriously, so I imagine he'll do even better, if you can remember what day it is. And compared to the fossil fuel industry, we've already been out investing them since 2013. But there is some bad news, I'm afraid. It's not all sunshine and rainbows.
Yep.
In the year 2000, we predicted that by the year 2020, we could generate 20 gigawatts per hour of electricity via wind power. Well, our predictions were completely wrong, because today we only generate 651 gigawatts per hour. We were wrong by 3,155%. Another catastrophic failure came in 2002, when we predicted global solar power generation would only increase by 1 gigawatt every year until 2020. We were wrong by 15,300%. Now we install 154 gigawatts of solar per year, and it only grows exponentially.
In countries in Asia.
Have I not been clear how much a gigawatt is? A single gigawatt can power 300,000 American homes, and you know how much those guys consume. If this rate continues, and which it will because it grows exponentially, by the end of the decade we should generate more solar energy to power 450 million homes. And if 3 people live in each home, that's 1.35 billion people living on solar energy. And that's just solar, not even accounting for wind, hydro, nuclear, and geothermal. So it seems humanity is well on the way to solving the climate crisis. We're taking big steps to change how we generate electricity, even though it doesn't seem like it at times, because a lot of the progress we're making are things you never hear about. When you do think...
Well, it's kind of good to see this, because from what I've seen in news and this kind of articles, they make it seem like it's just like just doom. Like 12, like you said, 12 years from now, the effects are just not going to be non-reversible, and most countries haven't really taken the steps or haven't really followed through with their steps.
It seems like a little clock. Like 7 years. That's when we get bad with the climate change or stuff like that.
I mean, there's already effects that's just going to be inherently just going to come because you already caused some damage to the planet. Like in the summer, I noticed, like, and you notice it got a little hotter. Yeah, like that stuff's going to be more rampant. It's going to get hotter. It's going to get colder. There's going to be more storms and stuff around the countries, especially like hurricanes and stuff. Like you can see it all around. I think there's a tornado in Alabama and Kansas that just went wrecked. I think it was like a state emergency down there. They had to call in the National Guard and all that. So it's already climate change is like you said is going to cause some problems, but we've been taking the steps to try to mitigate it.
He's right. People won't be sure that you've done anything at all. Wait, stop. We're not done yet. There's still a lot of stuff not addressed. Energy production is still only a piece of the wider puzzle of climate change. Another source of climate doomerism is the supposed runaway nature of polluting companies. My actions can't do anything because this Guardian headline said 71% of emissions are done by 100 companies. It's got nothing to do with me. This is defeatist bullshit. I have a question for you. Who buys from these companies? Do they pump CO2 into the air just because they feel like it? They have an incentive to because people buy their products. That means you buy their products. You buy petrol to fill up your car. You buy plastic made from oil that these companies dig up and refine. You power your home from a local gas-powered energy plant. You, me, and everyone else on this planet. You cannot absolve yourself of responsibility by shifting the blame onto corporations, most of which are owned by governments, things that some of us at least have control over at the ballot box. Governments, by the way, are also reining in these polluting companies by implementing carbon taxes or emissions trading programs, where polluting firms have to pay extortionate fines in order to pollute, which encourages them to cut down CO2 so they pay less in tax. Almost all of the world's major economies have implemented one of these programs, and many more are considering them. And those greedy, polluting capitalists are doing their bit too. The overwhelming majority of investments into green technology come from private investors. That's because they're following the money. The return on investments from renewable energy is over 420%, compared to a mere 50% of fossil fuels. Some people who are particularly up their own arses think that the only way to fix climate change is to abolish capitalism. This is clearly not feasible. If your climate change solution is to completely dismantle and rebuild the entire economic system of nearly every country on the planet within a decade, you are not serious about climate change. Of course, there's one final bit of nonsense that the climate doomers like to bring up, and that is... Yes, China is the biggest polluter in the world, but they're not morons. They know you can't take over the world if everyone is dead,
Exactly.
including your own labor force. Already, a quarter of Chinese energy comes from renewables, which is more than
China's
the
one of the
United
countries
States.
that's kind of
And China is home to some of the
technology's the
largest
fastest.
solar, wind, and
Which is so
hydro
scary.
plants in the world. And yes, sometimes it does look like China is taking steps backwards, like planning more coal plants as recently as last month. But this is because China has a tendency to under-promise and over-deliver, not only for propaganda purposes at both home and abroad, but also to use it as geopolitical leverage. The rest of the world is begging for China to reduce emissions and are likely to make political or economic concessions to get China to cancel these upcoming plants, which they will happily do because they never intended to build them in the first place.
Wait, you haven't talked about India yet.
Oh my god. Okay, India is home to 4 of the world's 10 largest solar plants, and they've all been opened in the past 4 years. And in 2020, they planted 250 million trees in one day. And even if only 60% of them survive, that's still 150 million trees. And actually, the rate at which India increases its coal production has slowed quite a bit since 2011, down to 4 gigawatts per year from 17. And if we...
You haven't talked about Russia yet.
Alright, okay, Russia sucks, okay? They're doing nothing, because they stand to benefit a lot from the creation of a shipping passage over the Arctic after all the ice melts. But the more we do to fix the things we can control, the more time we'll have to find answers to problems we don't have solutions to. This isn't just about Russia or India. The agricultural industry, the airline and shipping industry, and the mountains of plastic waste we produce each year still don't have definitive solutions. The intention of this video isn't supposed to tell you that everything will be hunky-dory and you can just sit back and not care. We're not doing enough yet, but the data shows that we're heading in the right direction and the world needs to keep the momentum going.
Yeah, I wasn't really expecting Russia to be the one to try to implement these newer. Because you got to think about it. After the Soviet Union collapse, their power has completely dropped, specifically within the international, influence. Because you got to think about it, before the Soviet Union was a world power, and then after it collapsed, Russia was mitigated to a regional power because its economic system was completely destroyed. It took a guy like Putin to come in and install a dictatorship just for him to rebuild the economy and try to get it somewhat going again. But now they got to try to reinstate their influence in all these old allied countries that used to be a part of the Soviet Union. Now you get these old countries that used to be a part of them joining NATO. They're fucking their enemy. So now they're worried about their borders and the potential of how they're exposed. So that's why they can benefit from the that ice melting up in the Arctic, because now there's these treaties or whatever for countries and your coastline. 200 miles off your coastline, you own whatever water it is. So if the Arctic was to melt, Russia's coastline, claims would be able to grow incredibly because there wouldn't be any ice to block, whatever. But that's why they probably want to stop. But yeah, this was an interesting video. Let us know want to see more of this stuff down in the comments. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share. We're at 10K subscribers. See you next time. Peace.